Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Those Two Geeks. My name's Alex. Joe is somewhere, and today we are joined by Frank Martin.
Hey,
And Frank,
how you?
I forgot to get a bio ready for you because this is a very professional show, and I know we're here to talk about your upcoming Kickstarter. So why don't for those folks who haven't or don't recall the last time you were on, which was probably about a year and a half ago now at this point, right?
Maybe I don't know. It might have been. It might have been last week. I don't. It's all.
It,
It all blends together.
honestly, like we were talking about just before, things go so fast and so slow, and it is often the way.
That's the paradox of time.
Anyway, so you've been working on a new Kickstarter.
I have. I'm always working on a new Kickstarter, but this one's a little special. It's bigger than my previous ones. It's a culmination with a new partnership with an artist that I've been working with, and so I'm very excited about it more than most, which is strange because last year I did 6 Kickstarters. The year before that I did 6. So when you do so many, you get a little numb to the process. But this
Uh,
one has filled me with a little more excitement because it's new, it's different, and I want to hear what people think of it.
yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's called Love and Death on the Dark Side of the Moon.
Correct.
It I just pulled up the Kickstarter. So to remind myself again, so it's a dark. I'm assuming it's a science fiction fairy tale, slightly darker.
Kind of. I mean, I wouldn't say it's too dark. It's not meant to be horror. It does have dark themes to it, more like a dark fantasy or a dark fairy tale. I use the term fairy tale not in like a content sense, but more of a tone of the story, if that
Right.
makes sense.
It
You
does,
know,
yeah.
it's firmly rooted in science fiction. It takes place on the moon. It's in the future, but there's a whimsical nature to the story and the way the character arcs unfold that I kind of call it like a sci fairy tale in a sense. Just it's hard kind of giving people just good descriptor of what the story is like. So I think that works.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know it hasn't launched yet. When is your launching date? Do you have that?
November 3rd, I believe, which from when we're recording this is quite a ways out. But like I said, we're very excited for it. We want it to be a big hit, which means kind of getting out in front of the pre-launch promo and talking to as many people about it and informing so we can get a strong start right out of the gate.
And that makes sense. I find that so often when there are projects on the go, you launch it and then you think, well, now I've got to talk to people, and if the schedules don't line up, sometimes the Kickstarter might be more than half over before things like this start coming out.
Or just about ending. Sometimes people are
Yeah,
scheduled. They're like, "Can you get me on this week?" And be like, "This week," So,
it
yeah. So
yeah. Funnily enough, that actually worked out for us. I'm sure when you reached out and said, "Hey, are you interested?" I'm like, yeah, great. How does 3 days from now sound? Probably not what you were expecting.
nah, that's perfectly fine.
But
I'm ready to chat whenever.
yeah. So and again, like this is going to come out the 28th of September, so literally tomorrow. Just with the way schedules have lined up, so we're more than happy to remind people again is when November hits that this show or this Kickstarter
Well, the cool thing
is launching.
about cool thing the way they set up their pre-launch is once you hit that follow button, you're going to get an email. Doesn't matter if it's in a week or a year. And once you get that email, you could check it out and get reminded, oh yeah, it's this thing. So it's however long the pre-launch phase is, you'll still be notified once you hit that button, which I kind of like. So it works. Doesn't matter if we're talking about this the day before it launches or now.
This is true. So talk to me about the 200 webisodes that the backers are going to get access to.
So, when we kind of devised my partner Gerald and I, we've been working on a lot of projects, and we want to kind of figure out a way to present these comics not just as comics, but like events or experiences. So this is a graphic novel. It's going to be around 100 pages. Of obviously, we're going to have the regular print format, soft cover, hardcover, and a lot of people, of course, they offer digital uh, rewards or a digital version of the book. And we didn't want to just take the pages, turn it into a PDF, and say, here, read it. So we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be spending a little money to format the book in a way that reads a lot better digitally. So we're taking those 100 pages. We're going to divide them up into some chapters, and then those pages are going to be formatted in a way that reads more like a webisode rather than just a flat PDF of the page itself, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, it does.
So we wanted to create a better digital reading experience that's unique and original, and really make it an event. So I'm excited for how that turns out. Again, the book is scheduled to be completed in the future, so we only have a couple pages now, so it's not like we're going to finish the campaign and then fulfill right away. As Gerald draws the book, we didn't want you to wait months and months and months for it to be done. So as the production moves along, we'll be releasing these webisodes, which is a good way to like update backers and say,
I,
"Hey, we're still here. We're still working. You get to read the latest
I
chapter."
was gonna say that I have been burnt on Kickstarters before, where you back it, the money comes out of my account, and then it's 3 years later. I'm like, did that ever fund? I don't remember ever getting that in the mail. And a good 7 times out of 10, it does actually come. But there's always cases where you're like, wait, did I just lose whatever it was I put forward to it? And obviously, with it being the webisodes coming out, like you said, it's a great way to update backers. It's a great way to show progress, and I'm sure in some way you can get like live active feedback as to how things are going, but in terms of audience reception. But I think that's a fantastic way is a to update people without I'm I say this being guilty of it of sending emails that people don't tend to open. It's like, oh, what's that? Kickstarter? Ah, it's probably nothing.
Yeah, Gerald and I are really putting our heads together
Yeah,
to try and craft experience, do things different, not do things the same way all the time. And we're really hard on ourselves. I mean, I've done maybe 20 Kickstarters. He's heavily connected into the community. And so we're not going anywhere, right? We're making these books. We're
yeah.
definitely going to fulfill them. And our latest project, which we did, our first one, was it was an issue of a samurai sword kind of noir thriller we did in April or May, I forget. And we're a little bit behind in fulfillment, and we get hard on ourselves because we take this stuff very seriously. And and I joke with him all the time that those bad actors you were talking about, people that fulfill and then or people that fund and then don't fulfill for like 3 years, they set the bar very low. So a lot of backers are like, hey, at least you're still here, at least it's not a decade. So it allows us to give us a little breathing room, which is not the greatest thing, but it's these are things are hard to put together and make and keep schedules and production timelines and stuff. So yeah, every little bit of leeway helps, at least to stay connected with backers and
Yeah,
keep them updated.
there's a lot more that goes into creating a comic book than I think most people are aware of. Between obviously the writing and the art side of things, but also putting it together in how you want it to appear on the page, and like you said, the webisodes too. There's a lot more of that side of things that until you're doing a Kickstarter, there's just no idea that you would have. You just have no idea as to what's necessary behind that.
There's a lot of production that
Hmm.
goes into stuff, and I think one of the best things I did for my comic creating was take a lettering and production class. And lettering is obviously the throwing the letters on, and the production side of things, it's it often gets overlooked because it's just like tedious. Nobody really wants to do it, but it's important. You need to get the pages in the right formats. You need to make sure that the right resolution. You got to make sure that the bleed areas are right. They go to the printer on time, that they're shipping to the right address. All these little things add up because if there's one mistake in the process, it could set you back a week or a month. So it's a pain. And no matter how many times you do it, you are all constantly finding new ways to screw it up.
Yeah, I know in nowhere near the level of experience that you've had with that, but I know just a bit about that. I recently put together a book for my wife for her work, and I had to teach myself about bleed and that sort of thing. And even then, I think it was more a case of well, I'm getting no errors. That must work, which is great for the scale of things we were doing, but no way near what you would have to do to be more aware of. Again, it was maybe 4 or 5 copies. It's not for sale anywhere, but it's one of those things where I had no idea about it beforehand, and checking layout, formatting issues as well. Spell check is great, but if in terms of lettering, if you've got the wrong font somewhere, that can be hard to notice if you're used to staring at something.
Yeah, yeah. It's always helps to get another set of eyes, you know. And no matter
Yep.
how many times I do this, I always screw something up. I print out the book, and I'll see like I missed the letter, and I'm just like, I read this thing a million times. How do
Hmm.
I'm just noticing this now? It's like the universe plays a trick on you,
Yep.
and then
Yeah.
I have my wife read it, and she's like, I'm like, you missed it too. So it just is weird.
It's one of those things where I find, unless I did read after the fact, and that this was of no help to me whatsoever when I needed it. But the way to do it, or for some people, is to read it backwards. So you go from the back page, and read the sentences backwards. So you're looking for spelling errors that way, or words that don't make sense, and you should then break the cycle of
That's
your eyes
cool.
seeing what they're expecting to see. I've never done it. I don't know how effective that is, but it's something that I may try if I ever do the same thing again.
Maybe, maybe. I've also found uh getting so printing has changed. When I first started doing these books, I would always get a printed proof because I was so nervous about the colors being wrong or the pages being out of order so I would get one copy for myself to read through and give the printer the okay. And because printing has become so expensive, they've jacked up the prices on just getting one proof, and a lot of creators are opting not to get it and trying to make things perfect. And I find when you're holding the book in your hands, you see things that you didn't see if you're just staring at it on the screen. And I've caught a couple of mistakes now that I'm not getting any printed proofs anymore, and it sucks, but I just can't
It's
logistically and financially. It just doesn't make sense to get them anymore.
it's a case of what makes the most sense for you, right? Like, do you get the printed proof? Do you spend the money on doing that, or do you save the money and hope that you can catch everything on
Yeah.
PDF form in advance? Um, I'm sure that there's a balance between the two, where even if you printed off the PDF yourself to look through it as a physical version, you're still not going to catch everything because it's probably something you're still looking at until you have that separation from proof to PDF.
I think my mindset got to the point where I'm doing so many of these, I need to streamline it to the point where I'm just not going to get a printed proof. So I'm going to have to reach that level at some point, but
Yeah,
it was a sucky transition. And you know what is strange too is that no matter how many times you do this thing, you never want to just rest on your laurels, right? You always want to continue to grow and to do something new or unique. So yeah, I'm gonna try, like I tried doing pins or I tried doing trading cards. So the bleeds that we were talking about, the formatting, even if I become super familiar with it with doing comic books, I'm gonna expand my horizons and do something
mm.
completely different. And I gotta learn the whole thing over again with something new. So
So what's
it's
the
a process.
process? So I didn't mean to cut you off. What's the process with pins and trading cards? 'Cause I'm assuming that there's going to be slightly different. How you get those together would be slightly different.
It's a little different. I mean, a lot of the the methods are the same as far as you need to get an image, right? Typically with a transparent background, you upload it and then they give you sizing instructions and then they let you know that they're pretty good about it when you order through a website what is and what isn't. But I think the biggest thing is the sizes, right? Because they're
Mm.
not. If you're getting a square sticker and if it's 1 inch by 1 inch, you know what 1 inch is. But if you're getting a character that's a pin that's cut out, 1 inch might not really be 1 inch. It might be smaller simply because it's an odd shape and an odd size. So I've gotten things before I thought they were a decent size, and they come in and like, this is tiny. you
This is
know,
way small. Yeah, way smaller than I was expecting it to be, and that makes sense because, like you said, if it's a square, you know what you're getting.
Mhm.
I've ordered stickers before where I thought it was going to be But well, 2x2 should be fine. That's all I'm looking for. But the person who printed them thankfully knows me well enough to know that I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. And so they said, here, we did it for, or I think it was like 3x4 or something, or 2x3 or whatever. He said, because it makes more sense and it looks better. He said, and I figured that you'd rather only pay for one run than two. I'm like, yep, great. So it was also my brother-in-law, so he knew that he had that leeway to just make the decision for me. But I can imagine that would be a lot tougher for a
Customer
printer to.
service helps.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
We are finally joined.
I think so.
Maybe.
Maybe. I thought I heard him.
We are there.
All
I
right.
am here. He is arrived.
He is here.
How you doing, Frank?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I'm sorry I'm late. I'm at a family member's house right now, kind of babysitting the dog. So but yeah, so everything's a little bit more quiet right now, hence the dog not barking in the background. Um, I saw the Alex sent me the preview of your upcoming project, and I love the idea, the love on the dark side of the moon. I really I dig that. I think that's kind of something that really isn't been tapped into in comics a lot. So I'm sorry if I missed all the intro here, and I'm just trying to catch up. But yeah, welcome aboard.
Thank you. No, I mean I loved writing this story. It's the longest continuous comic I've written. I mean, I've written
Mhm.
series where I've had like multiple issues that have been more pages, but this is one continuous story with it's not meant to have a break from beginning to end. So I felt when I was writing this, it felt like a blanket, it just felt really comforting to get into
Mhm.
this character and to get into his story. And it's not really a typical comic because it's not superheroes punching each other, it's not super dark horror, it's more of a, I don't even want to say romance, but it's more of like a dark fantasy romance where it's this character that's in this really tough position. He's been given a tough lot in life, and he has to try to find a way to make the most of it on the moon.
Right. And one of the most unlikely of circumstances, but a really good one.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what people think of it, and it's awesome having because wasn't conceptualized from my head that I went and found an artist to get and bring to life. A lot of times, Gerald is my artist partner that I'm working on a bunch of projects with. He has a kernel of an idea, and he
Hmm.
brings it to me, and then he says, "Make it grow and turn it into a story." So he already has like images in his head of what it should look like. So it's not like I have to try and craft it in a way where I'm making an artist do what I want them to do.
Yeah,
He
right.
he knows what he wants to do, and I'm just helping him push that forward. So I'm really excited to see how it develops.
So
That's
this is a
pretty
case.
awesome to have that process in reverse where the artist comes up with some of the ideas and then you kind of blossom it around the conceptualized you know drawing. I think that's really really cool. It's good when you have the synergy between both partners and both pairs because usually it's the writer comes up with a story and then hence the artist tries to mirror or match whatever the writer is conveying. So I think that's interesting to hear that you have sometimes the reverse.
In this situation in particular, Gerald and I have an interesting history. We started pretty much on New Year's is when we really started our collaboration, and I got tons of projects. I had my own track of stuff that I was going to put out, and
Hmm.
he had this interesting idea about this samurai wielding badass chick, just kind of like Quentin Tarantino,
Hmm.
Kill Billish, just going nuts, nonstop thriller from beginning to end. And he had a concept, like he wanted to do that, but he didn't know what the story would be. So he kind of just reached out to artists in our community, or writers, I should say, and was like, "Does anybody have an idea about how to do this?" And I was busy, so I kind of like threw out a half-ass idea. And
Right.
he was interested enough that he kept pursuing me. He's like, "I want to hear more about what you have to say." And I'm like, "Oh, fine, whatever." And we eventually developed it into a full issue and a full series that we talk about all the time. And we
That's
launched our
awesome.
first Kickstarter for earlier in April. And he had his own book, which was called Immortal Coil, which was a super
Okay.
cool horror book. It's a combination of like Lovecraft horror and Norse mythology. And he kickstarted a first issue that was well received. He kickstarted a second issue, but in the second, he kickstarted before he finished writing the second issue. And he said, Frank, we worked so well together on this samurai sword project. He's like, I could use your help finishing this. And I came on and I helped him work through the series that we're now launching Kickstarters for and developing. And he said, Frank, I got more stuff too. And I'm like, oh, fine, okay, whatever. So he brought a couple ideas to me. One of them was this Love and Death on the Dark Side of the Moon. And he said, I have this idea for this character, for this boy. He's stuck on the moon and he has this terrible affliction. And I don't have anything else after that. I just have images of what the boy should look like and what happens to him, but I don't have any story. So we started developing it, and over time, it kind of just naturally took shape. And before we know it, I have a 90+ page script that he's now bringing to life.
Which is pretty amazing.
It's been a very cool process. How we kind of, I don't want to say we finish each other's sentences, but we know where we're going before we get there. You know what I mean? Like I would say to him, I see this story as like a lo-fi story, like alien technology, like that kind of visual. And he's like, that's exactly what I was thinking of. So it's like we sync up really well together, which is nice. It's very cool when you don't have a combative relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it obviously makes the process a hell of a lot easier and also more fun because the free flow of ideas, there's not much worry about any type of, backlash or anything like that, or somebody trying to manipulate your idea or his idea outside of what it's intended to be.
I think it helps a lot that I'm continuing my own stuff.
Mhm.
I'm still next year. I'm going to probably have 5 launches of my own. I'm going to try to
That's
stagger
amazing.
them with the launches that we have together. So it helps that I have my own projects that I could be a control freak for and
Mhm.
kind of mold from beginning to end. So that when I'm working with Gerald and he has an idea, I'm just like, sure, yeah, let's roll with it. I don't need to micromanage your art. I don't need to control this stuff. And I had to kind of, I don't want to say train myself, but I have to understand how Gerald's brain works, is
Right.
because he'll send me a list of ideas and I'll be like, these are all very cool. And I'll say, I'll respond to these tomorrow. And knowing that by the morning, he'll message me and say, forget all that. We're going to do something completely new. So I
Right.
have to, it's understanding how each other's brain works is kind of a key to a good partnership.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you find that Kickstarter has become a real viable model for these projects? Do you think it is a beneficial situation than rather pitching it to publishers old school?
I do. I really do. I found Kickstarter in the beginning. I wanted to go to publishers because I didn't want to be in you're essentially self-publishing when you run a
Right.
Kickstarter. You're putting something out yourself. And I just wanted to write stories, give it to somebody, and let them handle all that junk. And it's hard because
Mhm.
this is just a tough industry. There's a lot of mouths to feed in the middle between distributors and comic shops and publishers that you need to generate a lot of sales to justify a lot
Right.
of these projects. So they're very picky, they're very choosy about what they take on and what they don't. Kickstarter allows creators to take control of the process and become their own masters in a way. And
Hmm.
it's scary and it's daunting, but it's also very empowering that I don't have to rely on a publisher telling me what I can and can't make.
Right.
But it's not like a golden ticket. It's not, you can't
Yeah.
just, this isn't Field of Dreams. You can't just build a Kickstarter and they'll come.
Right.
It puts all the work on your shoulders, which is, it's both scary, but it's nice because when people end up trusting you from this process, it makes the creation process so much better because like, I'm going to be making this. I got a strong and loyal fan base that is behind me, and
Hmm.
as long as I continue to try to make the best product possible and they're happy, I could keep doing this. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Kickstarter and crowdfunding in general.
It does seem like a much better vehicle for people these days to come up with creative things because, again, from what I've heard, what we've heard from other people, shopping the publishers can be extremely difficult because the process, everyone wants a piece of what you're presenting, and then all of a sudden, somewhere along the way, sometimes it doesn't become yours anymore. It doesn't even become what you envisioned. It becomes this watered down version of what you intended your, baby to be. And I just think Kickstarter is good, but it's also, I'm sure there's a lot of scary sides to Kickstarter. You know,
This is it's
there's got
comics.
to be
There's
so
scary
much
sides
nail biting.
everywhere.
It's not even funny. I'm sure you're refreshing the page 100 times a day, checking, the numbers, checking the backers, and that to me would be such a difficult thing for myself. I know me. I would never stop checking the backers, and it would be driving me crazy. But when it's finally done and you get that backed, it's got to be the most rewarding release feeling in the world.
It can be. It's like I think a lot of the preparation comes from before you even hit that launch button, right? You want to make
Yeah.
sure that you have a strategy in place, you have a plan in place, everything is good to go. So when you hit launch, sure, in the beginning, the first couple times you do it, you're really interested in that backer number and the funding
Yeah.
goals and the money going up. But the more you do it, the more you realize, look, as long as I have my plan in place, as long as I feel confident, I'm just going to hit launch. And then I got other stuff to do. I can't, I need to just leave it alone and let it do its thing, let the plan run its course. I have my social media posts set, I have my emails set. Stop worrying and just go back to doing what I enjoy doing, which is making the next
Yeah.
one.
No,
And
absolutely. And like,
and
so do you know all the tiers before you launch? Is there ever a time where you're like, oh, okay, now let's, you know, on the fly pivot and innovate a tier because something goes, I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some kind of pivot if things go better or worse than expected.
yeah, I mean, there's always some like game time decisions, audibles that we call, stretch goals we might drop or
Yeah.
something that we might add. Yeah, it's always a fluid process. You have to kind of pivot if things aren't working out, or if things are working too well, you got to China like this cover sold out in 10 minutes. Maybe we should offer like some sort of variant on it, just to keep it.
Right.
So yeah, there's all those different decisions that you can make along the way.
Well, I look at it in terms of like Alex and I are both, we're avid toy collectors, and Hasbro has the HasLab, which is basically a Kickstarter,
Yeah.
and I feel like comic books do it so much better because the HasLabs never seem to know what the hell they're doing. They put out tiers and stretch goals, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh crap, and then they either do it's either not funding whatsoever and it gets to like its final hours and then it fails, or they're like, oh, we need to offer something at like a couple hours before it closes, and it's just like, I always wondered because that seems like a very much a case of, even though they're a corporation, they should know where the hell they're going, but it seems like a case of, yeah, we're doing this on the fly, like we intend for this, but we don't know what's going on. And I feel like you don't really have that with the comic book Kickstarters because they seem to be more steadfast in their decision. Like that's why I asked you. It seems to be like, all right, here are my stretch goals and my tiers before I even go and hit that launch button. And a lot of times I don't see, I'll see flexibility in the comic book Kickstarters a lot more, or the graphic novel Kickstarters more than say a toy Kickstarter from a manufacturer, because they probably just assume, hey, we're all geeks, we're going to buy it anyway. Whereas the comic book industry has a little bit more, the creatives have a little bit more reverence for us, where they're like, you know what, this is going better. We're getting more love than we thought. Let's up the ante. Let's give them an incentive. Let's do something. There's a lot more play with it. Whereas like a large corporation is just like, no, we make the rules and this is how it's going to go. And damn the rest. Wouldn't you say, Alex?
100%. And I think that, Frank, you've illustrated that when you're in control of your own destiny, so to speak, you can pivot much easier than that. And I'm sure, having done as many Kickstarters as you have, there's also a level of experience that maybe you have and knowledge and expertise in doing what you do versus companies that may have a different team every 3 weeks doing effectively the same thing, and they just don't have that level of flexibility, what have you. When it comes to the preparing of the Kickstarter, I know we've talked a bit about getting everything ready in advance. At what point do you start looking toward the next? Not that I want to move on past the project we're talking about, but at what point do you start looking at the next project and actively ramping up toward getting that Kickstarter going? How does that balance work for you? Because I know you've always got something on the go.
Um,
Does
I
it
don't
does
know.
it work for you? I guess is the next question.
It does. I mean, it does take a certain type of brain to plan out multiple things at the same time. Like, for instance, Gerald and I know our next Kickstarter after this is going to be in March, and we have it set out how we want it to, the different pledge levels. I'm writing the script now. We already have a publisher signed on for that. So I tell people all the time, working in comics is basically living in the future, right? Because these things take so long to develop. I have books that I'm lettering that need to be released a month from now, scripts that I'm writing that need to be released a year from now. I'm getting art that's going to be released 6 months from now. So I have to keep all these different times in my head at the same time, and I keep lists and notes and stuff. So yeah, you have to constantly be projecting in the future while also living in the present. So it's just it's weird, but it's fun and it's exciting, and I have a good time doing it. Even if something doesn't work out well, it's just one thing that had a blip that you can't really take it too much to heart. You got to do your little post-mortem, figure out what went wrong, and then use it for the next one. So just keep on at it, you know.
It's funny, I'm working on something for an entirely different project where it's basically learning from your not well, in this case is literally learning from your mistakes, but I'm sure when something doesn't go well, you're able to take that, analyze it, and then build on it from the future. And it's a valuable skill to have that not many people think to
Mm.
develop. It is the looking inward and trying to analyze what didn't go to plan.
I don't want to. I want to come back to like the big companies running
Yeah,
Kickstarter, because
sure.
Hmm.
I don't work for a big company. I don't have their experience, but to tie it into what you were talking about, I think these are huge, unwieldy kind of entities. So if they run a Kickstarter and they see all the problems, it's hard for them to kind of shift and pivot and to do something completely different in the future. Whereas a single creator is a lot more nimble and can do things
Mm.
completely different the next go arounds. I've also never my experience with action figures. I have a little bit, but not like a lot.
Yeah.
And those pieces are so intricate that to run a Kickstarter for them to be able to do all the different things that you could do in comics, I feel it's a lot looser. You can play a lot more
Yeah.
games and have a lot more fun with it. With an action figure, it's like it needs to be set, especially those type of things where they have so much detail to them. But
Yeah. And it's
they're
the molds and things like that, the castings that they pay for and
yeah.
everything. So,
I mean, you look. I mean, Todd McFarlane I think he had a Spawn Kickstarter that
yeah,
friggin' shot to the moon,
it
and
went
these
right through. Yeah.
yeah, these companies, they see dollar signs and they're like, we got to get on this. Look how much money there is to be made, without really thinking about
Right.
what it is. You know, this isn't like a launch. You're not going to a store. You're generating an experience for backers that
Yeah.
is, in a lot of sense, they're used to a custom personal experience where it's one to
Hmm.
one with the creator and not just buying from Hasbro. So they
Right.
might not just understand the entity of the beast or the nature of the beast before they jump into it. But I think Kickstarter is going the way of these big companies. You see it in the comics
Yeah.
category. They see where the money's that the money's there. It's a direct to consumer market, and I don't think they're going to shy away from the bookstore market and the comic shop market.
Hmm.
But look, if there are dollar signs, a corporation's not going to just turn their back on it. You know, they're going to try to dive in.
No, and you made an excellent point. But I mean, I think the reason why Todd McFarlane, and one, I don't think he gets enough credit for how innovative he truly is in both comics and action figures. He's changed the genre in both. But I think that's why his Kickstarters are so successful, because he's still at his heart a comic creator. So he has his finger on the pulse of what the people do want. And as long as Todd's not writing, I don't mind, because his writing is brutal, but his art is wonderful. But I
I
mean, he knows, and it's pretty much a guarantee the second he puts up a Kickstarter, it's gonna fund. There's no question. It's kind of like the only other thing that I've seen fund as quick or as, often is like cards, like Magic the Gathering or
yeah.
something like that. Those are just insane. You're printing cardboard, but you're just the moon is the limit with those.
His campaign for that Spawn did something I've never seen before on Kickstarter, where I logged onto the page and it was just a
Mhm.
odometer. It just kept going. It never
Yeah,
stopped. It
it was
was like,
just
what?
yeah,
Even the huge ones like Neil Gaiman's, I see it periodically stop, but this is
yeah,
it was nonstop, constant backers. And
yeah. It was like a
yeah,
COVID counter. It just
yeah,
kept going up, and you were
he's
like, "Oh
he's
my
def-
god!"
he's definitely tapped into something, which is
Right.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and like I said, it's great that we have these new outlets for people, because, you know, there's a lot of people that have these brilliant ideas, and sometimes a publisher or a studio will just not see the brilliance. They'll say, "Yeah, that's not gonna, that's not gonna sell." And like a good example of it, because I'm a huge movie fan, but like when Sylvester Stallone created Rocky, he went to so many studios and they were like, yeah, that will never sell. No one cares about a boxer who's down on his luck and blah, blah, blah from Philly. And look at it now, because he said, well, I'll just do it myself. And it just became this huge thing. Or if you're a horror fan, uh, Damien Lindelof with Terrifier. Everyone said, another killer clown? Nah, not going to happen. And now it's the only thing you see at Halloween for the past couple years, as far as the predominant presence, is the Terrifier.
I I think that is true, but you have to there's a other side to this, right? There's the
Hmm.
artist side where Sylvester Stallone has this vision for a movie, Damon Lindelof has a vision for Terrifier, and then there's the business side to it, which not
Right.
a lot of artists have, right? And that's
Right.
why you go to a movie studio, or that's why you go to a publisher,
Right.
because they will bring this thing to market. And if when you make the decision to do it yourself, not a lot of people can put on that second hat, that business
Mhm.
owner hat, and have that business sense. And Kickstarter, it really requires that. People try to do that and they struggle, but you have to look at it as a business, right? I have these expenses, I have these I need to generate revenue for the expenses, and it's tough. It really is tough. A lot of times people get in over their heads because they
Yeah.
just don't have that mindset, or they need to partner with somebody who does do it. But the point is that Kickstarter allows people to jump into the game themselves with a fairly low bar of entry. And
Right.
yeah, I think it's like I said, it's not a magic bullet, but it gives you the opportunity to
Right.
have a to get there.
It opens a lot more doors, and I think that is absolutely apparent. It opens so much more doors, and
Yeah,
just it's one of those things that I'm grateful that creators have, because they deserve it. They absolutely deserve this avenue to have another outlet. It's when you're the only game in town, it can be very daunting. I look at it like Alex and I are also big wrestling fans. I'm a diehard wrestling fan since I was 3 years old. People may not like other companies other than WWE, but it's great to have them, because they open up doors for more work, for more people to get into the industry, and for more options. Because when you're the only game in town and you have a monopoly on something, it's like a either, yeah, well, this is what we're giving you, or too bad. It's not like that now, because now people can go, oh, you know what? I'm not really digging the way you're putting your stuff together. I'm gonna go see what this other team is doing. And it's nice to have that, because the competition makes all parties better. If you're the only game in town, then really you don't have to try as hard as you normally would.
yeah, if you're a comic creator and you make a comic, and Kickstarter or crowdfunding is not available to you and you wanted to get your book in comic shops and publishing is not an option to you, you get rejected by all the publishers. If you were to try to do it yourself, oh man, it's incredibly hard. You either
Oh,
have
I'm
to
sure.
you either have to reach out to comic shops individually and get them to order your book, or
Mhm.
you have to get into a distributor that has like a previews catalog,
Right.
and that's difficult in and of itself. So the entire system is not designed for the individual creator to succeed in that arena. In
Yeah.
crowdfunding, it's just like, sure, jump in. It's a battle royale. As long as you can, as long as you
If
could
if
swing a sword and survive, you're good to go.
Well,
that's
what I
just
think
like I've
makes
seen
the
so
oh,
many people come like there's a local comic company near where we are, and they have some great stuff, but they're not in previews because they just do it locally, and you either find it in the shop or you don't.
And
You can
that's
reach out to
okay.
them.
You know,
Yeah,
if
and
that's
and
what you
they
want to, if that's what you want to do, it's perfectly fine. But
exactly,
it
and
is a
they're
grind.
really
It's
good, and they're
absolutely.
doing what they do, but it's like you said, it's beyond dog eat dog world trying to get into a publisher, and Kickstarter allows you to have another option to get published and to get your shit into people's hands.
Kickstarter also allows the person backing to vicariously feel like they're part of the creative process too. I
There is
think there's
undoubtedly
that
a
element of
psychological
it as
factor
well.
to Kickstarter.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Where you don't get that with Marvel and DC. And there was a time where I stopped reading Marvel and DC for a while because the quality of the books were just awful. It took me a while to get back into a Marvel book, and I think I got back into Marvel, and I love Marvel. I love Marvel, I love DC, but the movies were firing on so many cylinders of what I wanted as a consumer, as a fan, that the comic books were pale in comparison at that point in time. Now, it's funny how that's kind of reversed a little. The movies have kind of taken their, foot off the gas a little in some respects. I haven't seen Fantastic Four yet, so I'm hoping that goes good. But the last thing was the Thunderbolts, which was excellent. But you had Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness and so forth. But for a while, I was not reading any Marvel or superhero books until Donny Cates' Thor came out. And I've always loved Thor, so I was like, all right, let's just give it a shot. And I read it and I was like, oh my God, this is so good. The way that he's, expanding on the lore and making it different changes. And it was like, this is great. The only thing is, I'll go to the end of the moon. I know it's a marketing process, and Alex and I have talked about this many times. One thing I absolutely abhor is I hate when publishers will stop a series and do a new number one. I know it gets people hopping on because it's a new number one, it's a marketing technique, it's this and that. But I would much rather read Spider-Man 1515 than, Amazing Spider-Man Volume 9, number 2. For me, that's just I love the continuity, I love the continuance, I love the legacy, I love the history of it. When you change it, it's like, all right, it's, and I know it's kind of like looking at it like different books having like different characters being written by different authors. And I understand that, but I don't know. There's something about that continuous, never ending model that I really like. And a lot of comics don't do that anymore. We just had a new Batman number one, and it's just always ongoing. And I think that's why you see a lot of these independent publishers or smaller publishers now really coming into their own, like Boom Studios and all these other ones, because people are getting something fresh and new, but it's also, they don't usually tend, from what I see, to renumber their books. It's either the story is done and then they'll go on to another project, but they don't usually come back with a volume 2 or a volume 3. Not that I've seen.
This is the great comics debate of our time
Mm-hmm.
is Western comics versus manga. And
Right.
the general consensus is that manga's winning. And when people examine why, this is one of the reasons why, is that they have, you look at something like Dragon Ball, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Goku starts off as a boy and he grows. It's a
Mm-hmm.
super long series. It's got a
Oh yeah, it's
tremendous
one of my
amount of
favorites.
volumes,
Mm-hmm.
but he grows and he evolves. So you see some sort of end on the horizon, right? We're
Yeah, it's
going
not
somewhere.
evergreen. He's not always stuck in high school or
No.
always down on
And
his luck. Yeah.
in the beginning, Marvel Comics kind of had this, right? We have the 60s,
Oh
we have
yeah,
the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. And
yeah,
when we got into the 90s and the 2000s, it got to the point where it was like, these are products that they want to stay ageless so that
they're
they can
IPs. Yeah.
constantly sell them.
Hmm.
So it's like we saw things like Peter Parker getting married and
Oh, I know. I love it.
Reed and Sue Richards had kids, right?
Yep.
They started to do these things, but now we're getting to the point where it's become blatantly apparent that they're stuck in a time capsule,
Right.
and these aren't linear stories. They're more like cyclical stories. And the great example that I love is Dr. Octopus, right?
Yep.
In years ago, Dr. Octopus had a storyline where he was dying, and then he literally died and then took over Peter Parker's
Oh,
body.
still my favorite Spider-Man story of all time.
And then,
I adored it.
but, and then when that ends, Dr. Octopus's journey continued. He went into a robot, he went into a
Right.
Peter Parker clone, and he
Yep.
eventually came right back into the fat Dr. Octopus from the
Right.
beginning. So it's like he went on this incredible journey, and I loved reading it, and it was so much fun, and he's right back where he started. And I think a part of me, like the childhood part of me, would have been like, this was pointless. What was the point of this? And then
Yeah.
I learned, like, no, the cyclical journey is the journey. That's the thing. All of these
Mhm.
characters, no matter what they're going to go through, they're always going to come back to the starting point, and they're going to hand it off to a new writer. And once I accepted that, I think I kind of softened on them.
Yeah.
But then that's where the readers are coming from, right? These are not linear stories. They don't have an end. They're always going to have a new number one. And
Mhm.
I think readers are just getting tired of it, maybe a little bit,
I
but
think
it's
so. Like you said, with the Doc Ock story, I'll parallel that because that's one of my all-time favorite. It is my all-time favorite Spider-Man story. I absolutely love that whole arc with Octavius becoming a better Spider-Man than Peter ever was, but then realizing he needed Peter back because there are certain things he can't do. I loved that. But also for the DC side of things, when you had Damian Wayne and Dick Grayson as Batman and Robin, to me that was like the pinnacle because DC has always been better at legacy characters. They've always been better at, like Aqualad and things like that, and then growing into their own. And I really enjoyed it. And I was like, you don't even have to bring Bruce Wayne back. I love Bruce Wayne, but there's 800 issues of Bruce Wayne. And then there's really like 2 or 3 thousand issues across every title of Bruce Wayne. You could have progressed with Dick Grayson, but all of a sudden, the Dark Knight Rises movie came out and they had to have Bruce Wayne. And it just so happened that he coincided the return with the Dark Knight Rises movie because Bruce Wayne is the recognizable Batman. And I really think, like you said, when these characters were first incepted, like when Stan Lee and oh my God, why can I not remember his name? Steve Ditko did Spider-Man, and I think they really too at the beginning intend for these characters to continuously grow. But like you said, once we hit the 90s, so once we really got past the Bronze Age, there seemed to be no more growth across the board with all comic book characters. It seemed to be just like you had hit a point where this is as far as the ceiling is going, and now we got to figure a way to either slow the growth or reverse it again and start the cycle anew. And that can be okay for certain time frames, but it gets aggravating because as a fan, we grow, so our tastes grow. So I'm not the 10-year-old that was reading Spider-Man that just wanted, the crack of doom and like I wanted the splash pages. My taste is more nuanced now, and I want to read stories with substance and gravitas to them rather than be like, oh, that was a cool fight scene. You know what I mean?
yeah. It didn't take long for Peter Parker to graduate high school. Like
No,
when
it
did
was
he,
like
like it was like issue
20.
50 or something, or even sooner
Yeah,
than that.
it was the
It
sooner than that.
was
I think it was like issue like 30 or 40.
it was very quick.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think Marvel and DC are also running into a problem because their kids are just gravitating towards other medium, right?
Yeah.
They can get their Marvel fix from Fortnite, they can get their Marvel fix from
Hmm.
the movie and all these TV shows, and the comics just don't have the same magic. They're getting my kids, at least, they're going to comics to fulfill something that they can't get somewhere else. and they can
Right.
get characters somewhere else. So it's the attention is just not there in the source material. And also, like we were saying with the Dark Knight Rises movie, we're seeing more and more that these characters are just becoming a product of their corporations, where
Yeah.
in manga it feels more like the manga is driving the anime rather than the other way around. Whereas
Correct.
you see constantly they'll come out with an Avengers movie, and then they'll come out with a comic book with the same exact characters as the Avengers.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
they're always trying to. Well, they did it with Miss Marvel, where they're trying to align her to
Yep.
be a mutant. So
I've noticed they've done that so much, especially since the MCU, where like the changes in the MCU will now become the prominent change or the prominent status quo in the Marvel universe, and that gets kind of confusing because to me they should be two separate things. You should have the MCU and you should have the comic books because the people who may not like the MCU don't want to see it twice. So, but it's just what sells. You know, it's tough. It really, really is. And comics will always, no matter how great movies and TV and anime and video games are, comics will always be my number one love because it's what I started with. And I will always adore the comic book medium in the four color world. And that's why I applaud people to continuously come up with new ideas. And that's what's refreshed too, is like, I feel like there is a well more of new ideas in the comic book world than there is in the movie world or the entertainment world because we're just regurgitating and rebooting everything in the entertainment world.
I think it's a production cost thing. Like
Hmm.
comics are not cheap to produce, but they are a lot quicker on their feet as far as making stuff and as far as what they're going to cost to put out. When you make a movie, it's a endeavor. It's an enterprise. It's
Yeah,
extremely costly, and people are going to want to see a return on their investment. And
sure.
that a lot of time doesn't translate to taking big risks and doing out of the box things. I was just talking with my son. My son's 13 now,
Hmm.
and I'm so glad he's enjoying. I'm showing him all of these movies that I grew up with, and he's really into them. And we were talking last night about stuff like the Blair Witch Project. We were getting into
Yep.
found footage films like Paranormal Activity. And
Yep.
I said, look, studios were willing to buy these movies and take big risks on them because they
Hmm.
cost like 10 grand to make.
Right.
It wasn't that big of a risk. But if you try to take a big risk that's going to be $10 million, they might balk on it. So I love
Right.
these grassroots things where if it's cheap and you can make it, the financiers have they're like, yeah, so we'll throw away a couple grand, So
Right.
that's how you get the
Exactly.
surprise hits.
Yeah, I'm a
Right.
fan of those movies too.
I think that's a good spot to end up. I know you're running up on a time that you said that you had
Hmm.
available. Where can folks find you? Social media. I know your website's Frank the Writer.
Yeah, everything is pretty much Frank the Writer. I've tried to keep that across all my stuff. So frankthewriter.com is my personal website. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram is at Frank the Writer. And if you want to find out about Love and Death on the Dark Side of the Moon, I'll be blasting it out all across those platforms as the date gets closer in November.
And
That sounds
uh,
great.
yeah, and it is, as you said already, you can save it on Kickstarter. So I think you've got about 150 people already waiting for it. Easy way to do it. I've done it myself. Click on log in, click save, etc. Um, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to add to that. We have
No,
a
this was a
history of
great conversation. Really.
yeah, no, agree. We have a history of very awkward endings, so I guess I
Yeah.
can awkwardly end here at this point.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games. you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.